In this video, I'm going to give you an example of how you could solve the word count problem from Practical Worksheet 1. I've already created this project in NetBeans, so it's now really just a question of how we design the solution to this problem. So let's think about that design for a few minutes. Here are the two views that we want. The first one is to allow the user to input some text and then click the submit button that will then take the user to this other screen that reports what they had typed and how many words had been typed. For us to be able to work on the data that the user has provided, we need to store that in a managed bean. And so let's call our managed bean word count bean. The input text will need to be stored in the bean. So we'll provide a private attribute called input text. Doesn't matter what you call it really, but that's something fairly meaningful, of type string. And for the JSF control servlet to take this value here and put it into there, it will need to call a setInputText method. Then when we come to the output view, that same text will need to be output, and so we will need to get the value that is now held in input text, and that requires us to write a getInputText method that will return a string. In the output view, we also need to report the number of words that were in the input string. So I've decided to have a private attribute in the bean called number of words, and for us to be able to get it, to display it here, we need to provide a getNumberOfWords method. Finally, we have to think about what happens when the submit button is clicked, because it's that will trigger all the functionality to achieve the desired outcome. When that button is first clicked, the JSF servlet is first going to take this value and store it in there by calling the set method. Then it's going to call an action method that we're going to call countWords, and it's this method that's going to examine this text here, count the number of words, store the number of words in there, and then return a string that will be the name of the next view. So it'll be this file name. When that happens, the JSF control servlet works out that it now has to get this value, so it will call getInputText. Then it's going to need to output this, so it's going to have to get the number of words. So now that we've got an understanding of how all of this works, let's take a look at how to do this in the code. So here's the standard index that has been generated when the project was created. I'm going to change this title to word count, and then in the body I'm going to put in an H1. I'm also going to change the background color. Now I could use some CSS here, but I'm just going to use some standard HTML. So that gives us this header. Now we want a paragraph to say type some text in the box. And because this is going to be submitted, it will need to be in a form. So I'm going to use the H form and put my paragraph inside there. And the text I want is type some text in the box. And then I want my input field. Input text value equals. Now this is where we want to link it to the input text field of the word count bean, but we haven't got that bean just yet. So I'm going to have to suspend processing here for a few moments and come into my source packages. I want to have a new JSF managed bean. We said we'd call this the word count bean. I'm going to put it in the beans package. It could be absolutely any package at all, it really doesn't matter. We'll call the name word count bean like this, and we'll change the scope to be request, and then click finish. That's going to generate this for us. And so now I can start implementing this design. So I want a couple of private attributes, and I want these get and set methods. Well, I'm going to do the two get methods first. I'm going to use the code insertion. I want the getters for both, and then I want a set only for the input text. So those are the get and set methods, and now I want count words. So I'm going to declare it. It must return a string because it's going to be the name of the next view. The count words, number of words equals input text dot, let's split that based on a space. That regular expression could be a lot more sophisticated, but it'll do for this purpose. And take the length of that array, just in case we've got any leading and trailing spaces. Before we do anything else, let's trim and then split. Once we've done that, we can then return the name of the next view, which is going to be, let's just call it result. When we don't put a file extension, it will automatically be assumed that it's XHTML. So back in the index, I can now link this input text to that bean. So hash brace word count bean dot input text. Now I don't call the set input text method. The Java Server Faces servlet is going to do that for us. So I just put the property name. So that's done this bit. Now I want a submit button. Followed by the submit button. So we want a command button. We want value, which is the text that will appear on the front of the button. And then we want action. Now this is going to call the count words method in the word count bean. So word count bean dot count words. So that's going to call the action method. So that's the first view with a link from the text field into the bean. So that will end up in here by calling the set method, and a link from that button to this method. So now I just need to do the output here. So that's the next view, which I said was going to be called results. Just double check. Oh, result. To result. And open it. So we'll keep the titles and the background the same. But for this, we now need a paragraph U-typed. We don't need a form, so I'm going to get rid of the form. U-typed. Then we've got a colon, space, single quote, then some text and a single quote. So there's the two single quotes. And what we want in the middle of that is an output text whose value is going to be linked to the word count bean dot input text. So that an output text is going to get the input text to retrieve the value from here and put it there. In the next paragraph, we're going to have it has 6 words, or it has whatever the number is, words. It has, and then a number followed by words. Now that number is going to be another H output text. And we're going to have the value equal to the word count bean's number of words property, which means that it's going to call the get number of words method to obtain this value to put it in there. So now that we've got that, now we ought to be ready to run the project, which will start the server. That's going to take a little moment. Then it's going to deploy our project and then run the project. The cat sat, click, You type the cat sat, it has 3 words. And there we go.